When we look at global headlines, it's so easy to get caught up in the macro level politics, right? The shifting borders, the treaties. But today, we're doing something a bit different. We're going to look right past those geopolitical borders and dive into the data to explore the actual daily realities faced by women living under occupation. We're unpacking the profound and honestly heavily overlooked ways these unique circumstances totally alter the human experience. Getting this right is absolutely essential, so let's jump in.
What happens when daily life is shaped by checkpoints, military control, and uncertainty? I want you to imagine, just for a second, waking up every single day knowing your family's safety, your access to basic food, your whole well-being. It all depends entirely on navigating these completely unpredictable hurdles. What happens when ordinary, everyday struggles are compounded by military control? And specifically, how does an environment like that completely alter the fabric of a family? It basically forces women to shoulder entirely new burdens literally just to ensure their kids make it to tomorrow. So to really understand the data here, let's establish a baseline. Living under occupation basically means a territory is controlled by a foreign military. Now, while that systemic disruption obviously affects everyone, the numbers show us a pretty stark reality. Women frequently carry a disproportionately heavy burden. Why is that? Well, because when traditional systems completely break down, they're the ones left holding the bag, managing the childcare, the healthcare, the education, and keeping the community surviving in the midst of massive instability. How does occupation affect women differently on a daily basis? To really get this, we've got to look past the broad definitions. We need to zoom right into the micro level and look at the granular, daily realities these women must survive. When the foundational systems that a society relies on just vanish, how do women physically move through a single day? What does it actually take to do the simplest tasks when every single step is regulated by forces completely outside of your control? Let's take something as basic as moving from point A to point B. Women regularly encounter a daily maze: checkpoints, travel permits, curfews, road closures, and security barriers. It turns totally routine activities, like going to work or just getting the kids to school, into monumental tasks. And think about the severe medical implications for a second. If you're a pregnant woman, a delay at a checkpoint isn't just an inconvenience, right? It can instantly become an acute, life-threatening crisis. But listen, we don't just want to look at the problems in this explainer. We really need to examine actionable responses. The data actually points us towards some really targeted solutions. For movement delays, we're looking at humanitarian access corridors and special medical travel permits. To address severe medicine shortages and the lack of specialists, we can deploy mobile health units or set up telemedicine programs. These solutions deliver vital care right to the women who need it most, bridging that physical divide. Now, this disruption doesn't just stop at physical movement or healthcare. It strikes right at the heart of a community's livelihood. Think about school closures, damaged facilities, and huge transportation safety concerns. Families are forced to prioritize physical safety over girls' education. Simultaneously, you've got high unemployment and severe business restrictions, plus male family members might be absent or detained. So, out of sheer necessity, women frequently step up to become the primary economic providers for their families. To counter these devastating educational and economic hurdles, we need pragmatic solutions. To fight reduced literacy and fewer career options, the data points towards setting up safe educational zones, online learning initiatives, and scholarship programs. And what about that sudden loss of family income when local markets get totally disconnected? While structural support has to pivot to empower women as primary earners. We're talking microfinance, dedicated women's entrepreneurship programs, and digital employment opportunities that transcend physical borders. Beyond economics, there's a deeply human and frankly terrifying reality: personal security. Women in these territories constantly navigate the fear of violence, harassment, home raids, and the very real threat of losing their homes entirely. When forced displacement happens, they often end up in overcrowded shelters. We're talking severe sanitation issues, zero privacy, all while children and elderly relatives are looking entirely to them for protection and some sense of normalcy in the total chaos. This level of extreme vulnerability requires a really robust global response. The challenge of personal insecurity has to be met with stronger, enforceable civilian protection mechanisms. Forced displacement and poor sanitation, that demands rapid humanitarian shelter assistance and safe housing reconstruction programs. And crucially, addressing ongoing human rights violations requires independent monitoring and strict legal accountability. These protections can't just be empty promises on paper. They need to be tangible shields for the people caught in the crossfire. But what about the hidden emotional toll of carrying these burdens? Beyond the physical obstacles, the concrete checkpoints, the shattered markets, the closed schools, we have to ask an equally vital question. What is the unseen psychological cost of carrying the survival of an entire family on your shoulders under constant stress? When the cameras turn away, how do these daily realities impact the quiet, internal lives of these women over years or even decades?
The internal stress is just immense. You've got shifting family dynamics, where women suddenly become household heads and sole caregivers, all while traditional support systems are completely stripped away. It creates this pressure cooker of trauma, anxiety, and the massive emotional burden of it all. Overcoming this invisible burden requires comprehensive, really compassionate support. Dedicated trauma counseling, accessible mental health services, and robust social welfare programs that provide reliable childcare and rebuild those community-based aid networks.
Now, here is the really critical disconnect. Despite carrying the heavy weight of their community's survival, women face severe political exclusion. Their social realities are overlooked, basic rights denied, and humanitarian access blocked. They are frequently entirely underrepresented in formal decision-making and high-level peace negotiations. But think about it. You literally cannot fix a community's infrastructure or protect its rights without the direct input of the very people holding that community together on the ground. Real solutions absolutely require their voices in the room. Are women living under occupation merely victims of circumstance? This brings us to a pivotal shift in our explainer. We've spent time looking at the immense burdens, the psychological trauma, the daily obstacles. But if we stop right here, we are missing the most important piece of the entire puzzle. The narrative of pure vulnerability is only half the story, and frankly, it massively underestimates the sheer power of the human spirit in these environments.
We really have to explicitly shift the narrative away from the traditional view, the one that sees women merely as passive, vulnerable victims of conflict. Instead, we need to look at the lived reality. Documented across history and multiple global conflicts, the reality reveals women as active pillars, formidable leaders and essential peace builders within their societies. They aren't just surviving the circumstances, they're actively shaping the resilience and the future of their entire communities. Despite enormous, systemic challenges, communities actually survive precisely because women step up. They actively ensure community survival. They take on extraordinary leadership roles to keep society functioning. They become the teachers keeping education alive in makeshift classrooms, the doctors running mobile units, the journalists documenting the truth, the entrepreneurs creating microeconomies out of thin air. They serve as frontline humanitarian workers and relentless peace advocates. Their resilience is the true engine of survival. Lasting improvement requires more than emergency aid. It demands a comprehensive, 360-degree approach. To properly support this incredible resilience, we've got to zoom back out. Now, emergency aid is absolutely critical, right? But it's really just a temporary bandage. Lasting improvement demands a holistic, structural framework that addresses the ecosystem these women are living in from every possible angle. We can't just treat the symptoms. We have to build a comprehensive foundation so these communities can stabilize, recover, and eventually thrive. This requires a 360-degree approach with actionable initiatives that empower communities at their roots. It starts with a humanitarian pillar, so ensuring reliable food security, safe shelter, and functional health care. Then it needs an economic pillar, injecting microfinance, jobs, and fostering local business opportunities so women can provide for their families. And of course, an educational pillar, protecting safe schools, funding scholarships, and establishing digital learning to secure the next generation's future. But physical and economic aid isn't quite enough without systemic stability. A legal pillar is essential for enforcing human rights protections and holding violators accountable. A political pillar must ensure women have a direct, authoritative seat at the table in peace negotiations. And finally, a psychological pillar, providing the mental health services and trauma recovery programs required to heal the unseen wounds of occupation. It really takes all of these working together. When women are protected, empowered, and included, entire communities become stronger. The ultimate takeaway is this: the lives of women under occupation are shaped by intense daily battles for safety, healthcare, education, and basic human dignity. But they are absolutely not simply victims waiting for rescue. They're the caregivers, the educators, and the architects of resilience. Structurally understanding and supporting their experiences isn't just some humanitarian side project. It is an absolute prerequisite for anyone seeking a just and lasting global peace. How can lasting peace exist without the women who build it? I'm going to leave you with this final provocative thought.
If women are the ones holding the very fabric of these communities together, through the darkest and most turbulent of times, how can any lasting peace possibly exist without the women who build it? Real solutions start by recognizing their strength. Thank you so much for joining me on